Manly. So let's talk about that. But you wanted to hone in on what is happening with Jake Trbojevic.
I always say to props that I coach, because there's been an outbreak in all levels of rugby league of props who think they're Wally Lewis or Darren Lockyer or Joey Johns. They pass the ball. 9 times out of 10, they get their teammate killed because they give them a hospital pass. I always say to my props, if Sam Burgess was running at you, would you want him to pass the ball or run at you? And the answer is always, I'd rather he pass the ball. And I always say to my props, do what you're good at and do that consistently. Jake Trbojevic, over the last few years under Anthony Seibold, has now started to play more of a ball-playing lock role. I'd say at least 50% of his game, maybe more, is catching and passing the football. Jake's shtick for most of his career has been hard yakka in the middle of the field, clocking up high tackle counts and getting some go forward, or at least soaking in some defence. Since he started passing the football, he himself has been confused in his own game, and he's now 32. He's had multiple concussions. He's wearing a bubble wrap headgear on his melon. He's probably a little bit more scared of going into contact when he's not going directly into contact. He's also staying on the field for long periods. He's letting in tries and he's missing tackles because he's on the field for so long. He's being coached so wrong, if you ask me. I would like to see him either used at the start for a 15 or 20-minute period. I always think in your prop rotation, because I think he needs to be in the front row now. In your prop rotation, you can always take one forward who doesn't get as many meters because his post-collision meters aren't great at the moment, and this is a symptom of his game at the moment because his coach is telling him to do all these other things that he never did for the first 10 years of his career. His game hasn't evolved. I would get him starting the game for 15 or 20 minutes, soak up some pressure for some others. If he doesn't make any great meters, that's fine. He just needs to get down and play the ball quickly, needs to rack up the tackles, get him off the field, and then bring some of the more powerful props on. And I think this is a massive problem in the middle of the field for Manly Sea Eagles because he's also an important element of the heartbeat of the Sea Eagles. You think of Manly, you think of the Trbojevics at the moment because of Tom, because of Jake, and also Ben in the second row. That is a Trbojevic club. That is a Trbojevic culture at the moment at Manly Sea Eagles. So I think it's a massive problem for them, Scott.
Yeah, I do too. I've probably held the view that I think what's interesting is the way the position of lock forward has changed throughout Jake Trbojevic's career. Because when he first started, I think the lock was far more of a third prop who didn't do so much ball playing and was there to run the ball and tackle hard, which suited Jake Trbojevic down to the ground. He's got one of the best tackle techniques in the competition, and he does run, or used to run the ball very hard. I think lock on the back of players like Isaiah Yeo and Cameron Murray and Pat Carrigan has become that more of almost a half in a prop's body these days rather than what it was when Trbojevic started his career. So I'm all on board with Trbojevic actually going to either 8 or 10 and playing front row. I'm not sold on him playing reduced minutes in that role. I think he's always been a pretty solid playing bigger minutes, but to your point, he's getting older and maybe it is time for him to reduce his minutes, but his game needs to be simplified for Manly to have any sort of success. He needs to be their forward pack leader and he needs to just run and tackle. That's what he was good at for, as you say, the first 10 years of his career, and the changes that have been made haven't suited him. I go back to his origin game where he played 15 or 20 minutes as captain, was it last year or the year before, whenever it was, and he literally just started the game, played 20 minutes, did exactly what you just described, and then sat on the bench for the rest of it, and everyone went, wait, what? But it actually did such a good job for the Blues, and I think that's the role he needs to be playing for Manly. Darren?
Yeah, I think you've kind of summed that up, and I know you've been big on that for a little while, and on that, Lee, the pressure cooker that we spoke about a little bit in terms of factoring those decisions in. We spoke about Payton at the Cowboys, and we spoke about Seibold at Manly as being obvious targets of pressure. If there's something like that, and obviously there was a response. They started the game well. Yeah. But then to fade and drop it like that with these question marks about how you're utilising weapons, what does that do for the the pressure cooker? We know obviously the Cowboys are under the blowtorch, but for Manly,
I always say if Einstein was a rugby league player, he would really struggle to conjure up his scientific equations for everyone's consumption because of the game being played with 13 other people who want to bash 7 bells of you-know-what out of you. And to that end, the most successful coach in rugby league history in terms of premiership wins has been Wayne Bennett. The second most successful in terms of official premiership wins has been Jack Gibson, and then Craig Bellamy in terms of getting to grand finals. I can promise you all 3 of those coaches did not confuse their players. And one criticism that has been labelled at Seabold over the years in particular, I don't know enough about Peyton's coaching style in that regard, is he sometimes wants to be the smartest man in the room, Anthony Seabold, or gives that impression. You're coaching footballers and you need to make them keep doing what they are very good at and do that repeatedly. That's how Melbourne succeed. That's how Penrith have been succeeding too. Doing simple things, doing the boring things, doing them repeatedly. And then there's other people who are in the team to make things look pretty. That's basically my answer to that question, Scott, because I think even the Cowboys in Las Vegas, their attack looked confused. Sometimes you've got to say to players, you, mate, run that way. When there's go forward halves, you shift the ball. You give the ball to him. Sometimes you have to break it down like that because their minds are so clogged.